So welcome everybody. We're just going to give people a few seconds to join and we'll get started in around about 1 minute. Okay, I think we're good to get started. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to this Jscrambler webinar titled Building Confidence in PCI DSS version 4 Compliance, How the AI Assistant Empowers Script Authorizations. So I'll be talking today about Jscrambler's new AI assistant and how it can help with script authorization requirements that are defined in PCI DSS requirements 6.4.3 and 11.6.1. So my name's Gareth Bowker and I'm a PCI technical advisor at Jscrambler. Joining me today, I'm pleased to introduce Pedro Fortuna, the CTO and co-founder of Jscrambler, as well as Fatima Almeida, who is the head of product at Jscrambler. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. This webinar is scheduled to take approximately 1 hour. If you have any questions as we're going through today, please do post them in the chat or in the Q&A section, and then we'll hold those to the end. This is going to be a discussion initially, followed by a live demo. And as I mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of around about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how we're doing for time. Those of you who are watching this live, you'll get an email with a recording of the webinar after it's finished. And again, for those of you who are watching live, you may notice a poll or two that pop up as well as we're going through today. So our agenda is split into 5 parts today. I'll shortly be wrapping up with this intro, and I'll then be handing over to Fatima, who'll be talking about the challenges with authorizing scripts and what an AI assistant provides. Next, we'll hear from Pedro, who'll discuss some of the security and design decisions underpinning the AI assistant, and how the AI assistant will adapt its responses based on your decisions over time. I'll then be giving a quick live demo of the AI assistant in action, and then, as I mentioned, we'll open the floor to questions with a Q&A at the end. So with that, I'd like to hand things over. Fatima, please take it away.
Thanks, Gareth. Well, I'm Fatima Almeida. I'm the head of product of Jscrambler, and I have the privilege of being part of the team that worked to build the AI assistant and of being here today to share a bit of that experience with you. I will walk you through why we built the AI assistant, so I'll focus more on the challenges that it solves, but also on how it transforms PCI DSS v4 script authorizations. And talking a bit about the challenges behind script authorizations. Well, in April this year, PCI DSS v4 requirements became mandatory. And with that, also script authorization. And what we have been able to see is that it is adding some challenges to organizations that need to comply with it. As some of you may know, it can be an extremely demanding, inconsistent, and error-prone process. And why is that it? Essentially because analysts need to assess script behavior, and they struggle with the high volume and the complexity of the information they need to review. Also, analyst skills can vary significantly. For example, some may not even know what a cross-origin iframe is. And because of that, decisions can as well vary from person to person, and, well, consistency is compromised. And Even though Jscrambler has introduced behavior-based monitoring as a way to accelerate compliance, and with that, we were able to reduce the number of approvals by around 90%. Investigations are still time-consuming because they still imply a high cognitive load, and it can happen that important insights end up being overlooked, and that can lead to wrong decisions being made. So the biggest issue is not necessarily the workload, it's the uncertainty, because analysts often don't fully understand what a script is doing or the risk implications of it, but they still need to make a decision, right? There is this pressure for them to decide because compliance needs to be met. And they know these processes are being audited, which means that their name and also a timestamp will be linked to that decision. And what we see is that this is causing a huge discomfort in some situations. So there can be a lack of clear insights that is eroding trust and creating this discomfort and friction in decision making. And this makes approval really stressful because there's this fear of doing something wrong, like authorizing a script that has malicious behavior. At the end of the day, these challenges also have consequences for compliance because they lead to delayed approvals, inconsistent decisions, like I mentioned before, and difficulties may arise during assessment, especially when we have assessors asking for proof of the rationale of behind some of the decisions. And as we looked to this reality and to the fact that script authorization workflows are being damaged by this lack of trust and this discomfort, it started being clear that businesses needed even more help to further streamline PCI DSS compliance. And in summary, that was the main reason why we decided to build the AI assistant. And what changes in script authorization with the AI assistant? We have been calling it the 3 Cs, and it's clarity, context, and confidence. So the AI assistant brings these 3 Cs as a way to empower analysts' decisions. And clarity is brought by clearer insights that support analysts on fully understanding scripts behavior, but also highlighting risks for that specific context. And it's clarity and context that paves the way to the confidence analysts have been missing, that confidence that they are making the fully informed, defensible, and consistent decisions. But what we did was not to build an automation engine. We built a decision empowerment tool that brings intelligence directly into the workflow. So it will be supporting analysts, but without removing their control. They still have the final call in the authorization process. So now that I framed the problem that we aim to solve, and also gave you this overview on how the assistant changes script authorizations, I will be adding some more details on what the assistant provides. And what does the AI assistant provide? So it analyzes scripts behavior and reputation in a way to provide clear, transparent, and context-rich insights that will support analysts on fully understanding the consequences of that behavior while flagging risks and suspicious patterns. But it also provides actionable recommendations, and that is probably one of the most important features of the AI assistant. It is translating converting its analysis into an expert and actionable recommendation that can be to allow, block, or also restrict a given script, this in alignment with PCI DSS. And just as importantly, it also provides the reasoning behind it. And that is what will be building the confidence, the consistency, and the defensibility in the process. So in essence, the AI assistant turns raw script information into structured guidance that analysts can really trust. Also, to further facilitate the script authorization process, it also generates some clear and audit-ready justifications. And on top of that, analysts can also interact with an AI chat and ask follow-up questions. And they can make questions like, why is this script risky? Or what has changed in the behavior of this script recently? So this is in fact a way to further explore context and get deeper explanations on demand. So in summary, these four are the most important features that the AI assistant provides. And this is how it will be providing clarity, context, and confidence to the script authorization process. And if we have to summarize what the AI assistant does, I think the best way to do that is saying it promotes a more confident way to authorize scripts. So from those three C's, it is confidence the one that resonates the most. The fact that analysts know that they're basing their decisions in reliable, risk-based assessments gives them the confidence that they are doing, in fact, the right decisions, and they are not compromising security by authorizing a script that has malicious behavior. At the same time, their efficiency is being improved through clarity and context that's supporting smarter and faster decisions, and consistency is as well being promoted. So those decisions will also be more defensible during audits, and overall compliance will end up being reinforced. So in summary, with the AI assistant, what we are doing is turning script authorization from a demanding, inconsistent, and error-prone process, like we described it at the beginning, into a more seamless and trustworthy experience that will support businesses on further streamlining PCI DSS compliance. And now I'll pass it to my colleague, Pedro Fortuna. Go ahead, Pedro, the floor is yours, and thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. So as CTO and as a technologist, I've spent a lot of time thinking about how AI could not just enhance, but truly disrupt and elevate the way we approach client-side security. So before we go deeper into the AI assistant itself, I want to take a step back and show you how we at Jscrambler, we think about AI, not just as a trend, but as a kind of a spectrum of maturity. So in the first level, we have what I called AI chats. Think of them like talking to a helpful friend. They are powerful, but they only know what you tell them in the moment. They have no awareness of what tool you're using, what problem you're trying to solve, or where you are exactly in workflow. So you have to bring all of that context yourself every time. Then we evolve into AI assistants, and this is where things start getting interesting. Assistants are embedded into products. They are context aware. They understand what's happening around them. They can guide you, recommend actions, help you justify decisions, and they integrate directly with the workflow that you're already using. They still defer to the human, but they do so with purpose and with precision. And finally, we get to the AI agents. These are autonomous systems that don't just respond to commands, they actually pursue goals. You give them an objective, like say, like analyze all scripts and then block communication with domains known to be malicious. And they go and they figure out how to get there. They plan, they take action, they learn from results, and then they repeat. And this is kind of the spectrum that we keep in mind at Jscrambler when deciding how AI should be integrated. And in the case of compliance and client-side security, we strongly believe in empowering the human, not replacing them. So now what I've just showed you, that maturity model isn't just theoretical for us. It's actually the lens that we use to make a strategic decision. If we're going to introduce AI into a security critical product, we need to do it at the AI assistant level. Because we believe that's only there that you could truly make a difference, not just like decorate the UI. So the problem that we were trying to solve is one of many that many of you know intimately, that in PCI DSS 643 and 1161, they require you to authorize every script on your payment pages. And that at first may sound simple until you actually try to do it and you realize that you're dealing with dozens of third-party scripts, ever-changing domains, and limited information about each one, what each one does. So some of our users admit that they have been overwhelmed. Even with our existing script monitoring capabilities, it's the decision-making part, the human judgment call of like, should I authorize this script? This is time-consuming, this is repetitive, and above all, this is uncomfortable. Because in order to go through all of the authorizations, you have like very limited time, often not enough time to fully analyze things, but you have to make a call. And I think that problem is greatly amplified when in cases where the operator is not even familiar with how the web and JavaScript works, which it happens more often than we would think. So we ask ourselves, what if we could build something that actually helps analysts and people with different skill sets make these decisions faster and more importantly, with more confidence? And that was what led to the AI assistant, which is the first of its kind in this product space. So we've seen plenty of products out there, like sprinkle AI on top, maybe generate some script authorization justifications or summarize a report. But we believe that that's not impactful enough. I think what we have done is fundamentally different. We have embedded a context-aware AI assistant inside the product, one that understands what you're doing and helps you decide, not just reply to your queries. And I think that distinction really matters. It's the difference between a chatbot and a co-pilot. It's the difference between autocomplete and relying on a trusted advisor. So naturally, some of you ask, but can I trust AI? And I want to be clear, regardless of what horror stories you are hearing out there with AI in general, this release has been designed with security in mind. First of all, it's opt-in only. Nothing activates unless the customer explicitly requests it. And if it turns out it's not being useful, you can go back and turn it off just as easily. Secondly, the assistant never acts on its own. There's no automation of decisions. It offers a recommendation, it explains why, and lets the human decide. And that was completely intentional. And frankly, essential for compliance workflows where accountability and nuance matter. And this is the principle that we followed. We empower the decision. We don't automate the decision. It's about helping people make better choices, not about removing them from the loop. So yes, it's AI, but it's also trusted, transparent, and human-led. So let's now talk about how we actually secure this assistant. The first risk we tackled is AI hallucination, where AI models, they tend to fill the gaps confidently but incorrectly. So in this case, we took multiple steps to prevent that. First of all, the assistant only sees strictly scoped context. It doesn't have general access to your environment, just verified data related with the scripts under analysis. Secondly, we ground every answer in real evidence. Essentially, we use Jscrambler's behavioral telemetry, like known vendor profiles, historical analysis, and we use that as hard evidence that we give as context to the LLM. If we say something about a script, it's because we have seen it. It was logged, it was verified, and we prompt the LLM into only using hard evidence provided by us. And finally, we're transparent when our level of confidence is low. So the AI assistant is trained to flag uncertainty. And in those cases, it actively recommends that you do a manual review. So this makes sure that the trust isn't blind, it's earned and backed by evidence. So beyond accuracy, we had to think about security and privacy, which are the two fundamentals. First of all, we built strong prompt injection defenses. The assistant is shielded against any attempt to manipulate its behavior, like using input tricks or prompt abuse, because we sanitize all inputs, we isolate the context, and we validate the outputs before they reach the user. Secondly, we ensure that data privacy from the ground up. So no sensitive customer data is sent to the AI provider. And anything that is shared, like vendor domain context, is contractually barred from being retained or used in model training. And finally, we maintain full user control. So as I said, the AI assistant is opt-in, and when enabled, it never takes action on its own. No silent approvals, no configuration changes. So the human is always in control. One of the most powerful things about this AI assistant is that it doesn't just generate responses, it actually adapts to your team. So it learns from how you use it, what your analysts choose to authorize, how and what they reject, when they ask for more context. Over time, the AI assistant picks up on these patterns. Basically, they will tend to represent your internal policies, your preferred thresholds, and eventually your organizational risk posture. So that means that the recommendations that the AI assistant is doing, they get more tailored to you, not just more accurate in general for any customer, any company. They get more tailored to your internal risk posture. So you're not getting a generic answer. You're getting guidance that reflects how your team thinks about script risk. And of course, every suggestion made is still explainable. There's a clear rationale behind it, so you can understand it, you can challenge the rationale, and you can reuse it for documentation or assessments. So the more your team uses it, the more aligned the recommendations become. So that turns this assistant into a true extension of your decision-making process. So to bring it all together, what we launched is not just a feature. It's a new standard for how script security and compliance decisions can be made with the 3 C's that Fatima mentioned: the clarity, confidence, and context. And Jscrambler was actually the first to embed an AI assistant directly into our PCI DSS 643 and 1161's workflow. But more important than being the first is how we have done it. We built something that helps analysts make faster and more confident decisions by giving them real context, clear recommendations, and explainable reasoning. So this assistant doesn't just take control away from your team, it empowers them. It helps them be more confident in every script authorization, especially when the stakes are high. And the more your team uses it, the more aligned it becomes with your policies, your risk thresholds, and your judgment. And I think that's what makes this special. It's not just an AI feature, it's kind of a decision support layer designed with the same rigor and accountability we apply to every part of our security platform. And with that, I'll hand it over to Gareth, who will show you exactly how the AI assistant works inside the product. Over to you, Gareth.
Thank you, Pedro. Right, let me just get my screen sharing working. There we go. So you should all now be able to see our dashboard for web page integrity in the PCI DSS module for it. So there's a couple of things I'm going to be talking through today and showing the AI in action. We're going to be looking at 2 different tasks here. The first is whether to authorize Stripe. This is a new payment service provider that's just been added onto our payment page. And then the second, we'll be looking at change to some JavaScript. In this case, we've got full story running on the page. It's an analytics package, except in this case, it's been tampered with. We've tampered with it, and we've added a skimmer into the page. And obviously you can see here that's been detected, but we'll use the AI just to get us a bit more information about what's going on, what we should be doing, what we should do in terms of authorization and so on. So the first thing to show here is down the right hand side, you can see there's an AI insights section. It gives you some insight into which behaviors we've detected. And then you can see some security checks below this in terms of exactly what it's checked and the responses that we've got for those. So that's just a nice overview for this. When we go into the details for this, we'll see a little bit more as well. So everything is being done here in real time. You can see the analysis that's going on with the latest data that's available to us. Here we go. And so you can see it's very similar to what we saw with the insights there, but because we're now a bit closer to the authorization process, we're adding in some additional information here. So you can see that the recommendation that we're giving based on the information that we have around Stripe, what its behaviors are, what we know about Stripe, and to what Pedro is talking about as well, the types of authorizations that you've done in the past. The recommendation here is to allow to authorize Stripe as a payment service provider. So you can see the different settings that should be used as well here. So if I just go into Analyze with AI, this is where the interesting stuff really starts. This gives us the ability to query the AI assistant directly and to ask more about this. So if we were to ask, for example, tell me more about Stripe, then again, it's using the information that we have on Stripe that we've provided to the AI assistant here. And you can see it's categorized the payment processor. It tells you about the specific behaviors that this is doing in terms of accessing form data, in terms of network connections and the iframe that's being loaded. You can see a risk profile here as well. So it's suggesting that it's a low risk issue, a low risk to add Stripe here. And then it also has an understanding of PCI DSS here as well. So it knows that it looks like it's low risk, but that doesn't simply mean that you should automatically add it. It is saying here, if it's an expected payment processor for your business, you still need to validate that. But provided it is one that you're expecting, then the recommendation here is to authorize it. We could also ask it some additional questions. So what additional risks are there with Stripe? And again, it will tell you all about that. There we go. So it gives you a little bit more information. It talks about domain reputation and so on within this as well. So it's very useful to be able to get an insight into exactly what the script is doing, what its risk is, whether the information that we're providing matches up with what you're expecting, and so on. And so it's very, very useful there to give you that insight and that confidence that that your authorization is correct. So in this case, when it comes to then conducting the authorization, again, because it knows about Stripe, it knows it's a payment processor, we're able to pre-populate a justification here as well. So this is written by the AI assistant. Again, it is completely optional. You can choose to switch this off and use your own justification. And then it's also used those recommendations from here to pre-populate the permissions. Again, it's all within the control of the analyst here to determine what they want to do, whether to allow or to deny that particular behavior. But provided they're happy with all of this, they can hit save. And then I think I've simply been logged out of the dashboard here while I've been talking. So let me just refresh this. There we go. And now we should be able to conduct the review. We hit save, and that now is completed. So we're now looking at full story here second. So full story, as you can see, it's got a potential skimmer that's been found here. So alongside all of the AI stuff that we have going on here, we also have a skimmer major classification detection engine. So that's detected a skimmer here as well. That information is provided to the AI assistant here. Again, from an insights perspective, we can see just a high-level review of exactly what's going on, the different security checks that it's done, what's happening, and so on. And if we go into the details again, we can see a little bit more here. Just while we're waiting for the analysis here, I'll just show you some of the additional information that we have here. So you can see the types of behaviors that we've detected. They're all going on here. And if we go back to the insights, that should just complete in a second, and we'll be able to query this a little bit further. So it's taking all of the information that we have, and it's then analyzing that here. There we go. So you can see now the insights have completed the analysis. It's recommending some restrictions be put in place around the behaviors. So we saw three particular types of behavior, which was form data access, network transfer, and iframe control. Because it thinks they're malicious, it's recommending that all three of those behaviors get blocked. For the form control here, we actually don't have any insight at all into that. We've not detected any form control. And so at this point in time, that would be safe to allow. But based on everything else, as an analyst, you can use all of this information to make your own determination. So if we go into analyze now, we can ask some additional questions. So we could say something like, how many customers might have been impacted by this malicious script? And again, it's able to use the data that we've collected here. And you can see here that there's 10,000 sessions here that it's detected with the malicious script. Obviously, because this is a test environment, some of our numbers are a little bit binary like this, but you can get that information out of the AI assistant here. You could also ask it about the reputation. So what is the reputation of the target domains? And again, it can tell you a little bit more about that too. There we go. So it's able to tell you exactly which domains we saw from the behaviors earlier, but it then also gives you some information about each of those. So you can see here that malicious API.thirdpartydomain.net, this is actually where our attackers are sending the data that they're capturing. You can see that it's unauthorized and potentially malicious. This is why it is considered to be a high risk script here. You can see that there are some full story domains involved here as well, which would be expected if they've simply compromised an existing script. So you can get a lot of information here to help you make your decisions. And then you could also ask something like, what is the impact of blocking full story? Again, because it has an understanding of exactly how web page integrity works and the functionality that's provided within web page integrity and the PCI DSS module, it can give some guidance around that. And you can see here, for example, there's information about PCI DSS compliance and the requirements and what you need to do around this. So, it's really useful information. It's very in-depth information. And so if you're not entirely sure what you need to do around a particular authorization, whether to authorize something or not, it's a really useful tool to be able to give you that confidence again, to validate your assumptions, to check your assumptions, and to really do a deep dive into exactly what this is doing and how those malicious scripts are working as well. So that is pretty much it. I think at this point I'll stop sharing and we can move on to the Q&A. So I do not see any questions within the Q&A section or within the chat, but if anybody does have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat or the Q&A section, or if you prefer just to ask a question out loud, if you raise your hand, then we can add you as a speaker and you can ask away. So I'll just give people a few seconds just to ask any questions. I'm not seeing anybody typing. I'm not seeing any questions coming in. And scrolling down, I'm not seeing any hands up either. So I'll just give people a few more seconds. Otherwise, we will wrap up.
Maybe we can ask questions, like if somebody in the audience is has felt like a few problems in the decision-making process with their existing, setup. If they felt like they had very limited information, contexts, or even time to make their determinations, I think that is helpful feedback that we can ask if somebody wants to share.
Maybe I will answer that in terms of my experience with having discussions with both prospective customers of ours, as well as existing customers that we've been doing some demos of this with. I think the examples that were given in the demo here just now with Stripe and with Full Story, they're quite obvious types of examples because you generally know who your payment processors are and some of the main third-party scripts that are running. But quite often you'll have marketing scripts being added through Google Tag Manager and things like that. There can often be scripts that you don't know from whether it's a third party, fourth party, fifth party scripts that are being added in here. And so it's not always obvious what these scripts are, what the domain reputation is, and so on. And certainly in terms of the feedback that we've had so far, there's often a lot of confusion around those types of scripts, and exactly how they're getting into the page and what they're doing and so on. So this certainly has been of interest to quite a few of our customers so far, for the sort of lesser known scripts, getting information there.
Did you talked with prospects or people at the community meetings that actually shared that they are using several types of roles, people analyzing the scripts, like not necessarily like senior seasoned security analysts, maybe like, you know, other types of roles, because it can be a time consuming. And so I think in some situations the cost is very much in the minds of the people responsible for these programs. So they end up like trying to train people into doing this type of tasks, but maybe they are not, they don't necessarily possess all the knowledge that is needed to make, a good decision. Maybe they wouldn't know their way around the JavaScript in some cases. Have you heard from people that they have that challenge?
Yeah, it's really varied in terms of who is actually doing the script authorization. In some cases, it'll be a knock or a SOC that the company has that is looking after the alerts that are coming out and then responding to them. And there it can really vary from a junior analyst to a DevOps setup where perhaps the developers are being more involved and they have a much better knowledge of the scripts that are being included. It really does vary, but there's always occasions where scripts are coming in, particularly with multiple third parties being used, where you simply don't know all of the scripts that are running or the reputation of them or when they were added, for example. So this is all something that's really useful with the AI to be able to query it and ask it about the stuff you don't know. That's really where this comes into its own. And as I was talking about, validating your assumptions, validating that what you think it's doing is actually what's happening. But yeah, it's a real spread of people that I've seen who are actually conducting the approvals and the authorizations for this.
In the meantime, we got a question.
Ah, excellent. So a quick clarification, in the Stripe example you showed during the demo, would both Stripe and the merchant, the end customer, be responsible for implementing script monitoring to meet 643 and 1161, or does Stripe's monitoring alone satisfy those requirements? That's a really good question, interesting question. So the short answer is that both entities there are going to be responsible. So Stripe is responsible for the iframes that they're providing and making sure that what's inside those iframes, which is what's loaded from Stripe, that's meeting requirement 643 and 1161. For the merchant, that probably does come under 643 and 1161, with the exception of if they're doing SAQA, because there it then relies on the eligibility criteria, although that also then calls out 643 and 1161 as one way to meet this. So if the entity has to do 643 and 1161 because they're doing a full ROC or they're doing something other than SAQA, then yes, the merchant would need something within their payment page, or the parent page in this case, and Stripe or the other payment service provider, they would be looking after the security within the iframe there too.
Yeah, just to reiterate what you said, like it's really important, even in the situation of the SAQA, in order to prove non-susceptibility. So to be eligible for to stay eligible for the SAQA, It's very, very common that people just go ahead and meet the two requirements anyway, because that will for sure ensure that they are eligible. It's not the only way, but it's one of the most common ways because of predictability.
Hmm. And in fact, that's kind of leads to an interesting point as well. I've been having some internal discussions, as you know, around that what the payment service provider is responsible for and what they can attest to, essentially. In some cases, there are documents provided by the PSP that say that the scripts that they're providing are secure, and that's all well and good, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the merchant's website, which is the wording in the eligibility criteria, that the merchant's website is not susceptible to script attacks. There still needs to be something that is active and running within the merchant site, whether that's provided by the merchant through something like web page integrity, or it's something that's provided by the PSP as part of their script. There still needs to be some active protection that's going on within that page, within the parent page, to meet the eligibility criteria.
Also, I think I'm curious if that mirror mask incident just recently discovered by Turaco Labs, where the attackers actually were able to perform a silent scheming attack on a payment iframe by essentially rolling out a fake iframe that would overlay the real iframe, and then essentially that fake iframe is sending all the requests through a proxy. And the difference is that because they have a proxy in the middle, they can actually tamper with the security headers. And so one of the ways that a payment service provider can detect this type of attack is essentially or to downgrade it from a silent scheming attack to a double entry scheming attack is by looking at the security headers, things like the origin or the referrer, and double check if they're coming from the expected domains. And up until recently, we haven't seen an attack that was going around that. So people were fairly confident that, if they check their headers carefully, that's all the controls that you need from a payment service provider perspective. So that would give them confidence to, to essentially relegate or delegate that the merchant could delegate to the payment service provider the monitoring or the insurance that the merchant didn't have to do anything further. But now this kind of changes things. So I'm really curious about how the industry will react in the face of this recent attack. You can actually read all about it in our blog, where the payment service provider can no longer detect that on their own, and now the only security controls that actually are able to mitigate this are ones that need to be deployed to the parent page or the page hosting the payment iframe, whether that's done by the payment service provider piggybacking on their script. Usually they deploy a script to the parent page, like Stripe.js in this case, or by the merchant themselves. But in many situations, that's not happening at all. Like the payment service provider is not doing this type of security control, and neither is the merchant. So again, one way to address that is essentially to go through the route of meeting the two requirements in the conventional way.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see over the coming months how people respond to the Mirror Mask attack and other attacks that are still sort of theoretical, but we haven't seen real world attacks against iframes in certain cases. The Mirror Mask one was a new and novel one. Yeah, it will be very interesting to see what happens over the coming months and whether the PCI Council responds to them as well.
Well, just to clarify that, we have seen attacks against iframes, but not silent scheming attacks. I think that's the fundamental difference here. We've seen plenty of attacks that were double entry, and in a double entry scheming attack, the end user is asked twice to enter their payment details, and people may argue, okay, let's dismiss those attacks because they, the user or one user or a few users may report that occurrence. So the attack is discovered more easily and addressed sooner. So the risk is lower. And so nothing was needed. But now we're actually seeing it's no longer theoretically. The mirror mask attack is a proven case that there are attacks in the wild that target the payment iframe that result in a silent scheming attack. And those are pretty hard to detect. They will take long and it will be hard to detect if you don't have monitoring controls on the parent page, that is.
Right, so we've just popped up a poll for people. We would appreciate your answers if you've got a few seconds just to read through and answer that. And then we will wrap up very shortly. If you do have any further questions, either pop them into the Q&A or the chat very, very quickly, and we'll try and answer them live here. Otherwise, once you get your email with the recording, feel free to respond to that, and we'll pick up any other questions that you might have afterwards. Just give people a few more seconds to respond to the poll. Okay, well, with that, thank you very much to those of you who've attended live. We hope you found it useful. Thank you as well to Pedro Fortuna and Fatima Almeida for joining me in this webinar. With that, I'd like to wrap up and just say thank you very much once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.